The expensive champagne flowed freely at Sterling Enterprises' annual executive party. But I nursed my sparkling water, watching the scene unfold from my corner of the grand ballroom. My $50 phone sat on the table beside me, its scratched case a stark contrast to the glittering chandeliers and designer outfits surrounding me. Is that really a technophone? Madison Williams, the regional manager's wife, didn't even try to hide her disdain as she peered at my device. I didn't even know they still made those. Her perfectly manicured hand clutched the latest iPhone, its designer case probably worth more than my entire phone. I smiled politely, used to these reactions. It makes calls and sends texts. That's all I need. But darling, Madison's voice dripped with false concern, loud enough to attract attention from nearby tables. How do you even take proper photos? The camera must be dreadful. Before I could respond, James Sterling Jr., the CEO's son and heir apparent to Sterling Enterprises, sauntered over, his signature smirk firmly in place. Mother was right, letting the entire staff attend these events really has lowered the tone. He picked up my phone, turning it over with 2 fingers as if it might contaminate him. What department are you from again? Mailroom? Actually, I'm new, I replied calmly, taking my phone back. Just started this week. Well, Madison jumped in, clearly delighted to have an audience gathering. Perhaps after a few paychecks, you can upgrade to something more appropriate for our company's image. Though with entry-level salaries these days, she trailed off with a theatrical sigh. Speaking of image, James added, straightening his custom-made suit. The board meeting tomorrow will determine the company's new direction. Big changes coming. He winked at Madison. Some people might want to start updating their resumes and their phones. I checked my cheap phone's screen, 7:58 p.m. Perfect timing. The board meeting was actually moved to next week. I commented casually, taking a sip of water. James laughed loudly, drawing even more attention. Sweetheart, I think I would know about any changes to the board meeting. I am the CEO's son. Oh yes, James Sterling Jr. I smiled, standing up as I heard familiar footsteps approaching. Which makes me Sarah Sterling. The room fell silent as my father, James Sterling Sr., CEO of Sterling Enterprises, walked in, his commanding presence drawing all eyes. I see you've all met my daughter. Madison's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. James Jr., my half-brother who'd never bothered to attend any family events or look at photos of his father's new family, turned an interesting shade of pale. Since we're all here, Dad continued, his voice carrying across the now silent ballroom, I'd like to make an announcement I'll be officially making at next week's board meeting. After 30 years as CEO, I'm stepping down. James Jr.'s smirk started to return. And I'm proud to announce that after completing her MBA at Harvard and spending the past 5 years turning around our international divisions under a different name, my daughter Sarah will be taking over as CEO, effective immediately. The silence was deafening. I could practically hear Madison's jaw hit the floor. But James stammered, I'm your son. The hair. I've been working here for 3 years, Dad cut in smoothly, during which time you've spent more money on designer suits than you've brought in through deals. Meanwhile, Sarah has increased our international profits by 300%, while living on an entry-level salary and using a basic phone because she wanted to understand every level of our business operations. I pulled up my company performance charts on my trusty $50 phone, projecting them onto the ballroom's presentation screen. Actually, it's 324% profit increase. Would anyone like to see the quarterly breakdowns? The next hour was a blur of executives who'd ignored me all evening suddenly discovering they'd always wanted to discuss international market strategies. Madison's attempts to apologize were almost as entertaining as watching James Jr. try to explain to his friends why he'd never mentioned having a sister. But the real work was just beginning. I'd spent 5 years learning every aspect of our business, from the mailroom up. I'd seen how middle management like Madison's husband treated staff when they thought no one important was watching. I'd experienced firsthand the toxic culture my half-brother and his friends had created in upper management. And now, as CEO, I had the power to change it all. My $50 phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Ready for phase 2. I smiled, thinking of the restructuring plans already prepared on my laptop. James Jr. had been right about one thing. Big changes were coming to Sterling Enterprises. Just not the ones he'd expected. The party wound down around midnight. But I stayed behind, sitting in what would soon be my office, looking out over the city lights. The same view James Jr. had probably imagined would be his. My cheap phone sat on the expensive desk, a deliberate reminder of where I'd started and why. The door opened and closed quietly. "Your mother would be proud," Dad said, sitting down across from me. She always said success wasn't about having the most expensive things, but about understanding the value of everything. I thought of my late mother, who taught me that true worth wasn't found in designer labels or latest gadgets. "The board meeting next week will be interesting," Dad finished, smiling. "Especially when they see the evidence you've gathered about certain executives' creative accounting practices." My phone buzzed again. An email from HR confirming receipt of my restructuring plans. Phase 2 would start tomorrow, bright and early. Madison's husband had been skimming from employee pension funds. James Jr. had been inflating his expense accounts and taking kickbacks from suppliers. And I had documentation of all of it, gathered methodically over 5 years while they were too busy judging my phone to notice what I was doing with it. "Get some rest," Dad advised, heading for the door. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." I picked up my $50 phone, checking the secure folder containing 5 years' worth of evidence. Yes, I agreed. It certainly is. For some executives at Sterling Enterprises, tomorrow would be their longest day ever. And I'd record it all on my cheap phone. The next morning, I arrived at Sterling Enterprises at exactly 7 a.m., my $50 phone and 5 years of evidence securely in hand. The security guard did a double take when I used the executive elevator. Apparently, James Jr. had sent a company-wide email at 3 a.m. claiming I was an imposter. "Miss Sterling," my new executive assistant, Thomas, greeted me. He'd been with the company for 20 years and had seen everything. "Mr. James Jr. is waiting in your office with his lawyer." "Perfect," I smiled, pulling up a specific folder on my phone. "Please call security and have them ready." James Jr. sprawled in my chair, feet on my desk, his lawyer standing nervously beside him. "Listen, sis," he sneered at the word. "Let's make this easy. You walk away now, keep whatever Dad promised you, and we'll forget about your little stunt last night." I set my phone on the desk, camera facing him. "You mean like how you forgot about the Miller contract?" His feet dropped from the desk. "What?" "The Miller contract. 3 months ago, you took a kickback of $500,000 to award it to your friend's company instead of the more qualified bidder." I played the recording from my phone. James Jr.'s own voice discussing the deal in what he thought was a private conversation. "You can't," his lawyer started. "Oh, but I can. You see, while everyone was busy mocking my cheap phone, they never noticed it recording their conversations. Legal in this state with one-party consent, by the way." I turned to the lawyer. "You might want to stay for this next part. It concerns your billing practices, too." Security arrived as James Jr. lunged for my phone. "This is all lies. I'll sue." "Actually," I pressed play again. "Here's you admitting to embezzlement last Christmas. And here's your conversation with Madison's husband about the pension fund scheme. The FBI is very interested in that one." The lawyer quietly gathered his things and left. By 9 a.m., Madison's husband had been escorted from the building, his computer seized by corporate security. By 10 a.m., 3 more executives had resigned rather than face audit findings. James Jr. was still yelling about lawsuits when security removed him from the premises. "Your brother's friends are all resigning," Thomas reported, bringing in more documentation. "And Madison is in the lobby, insisting she needs to speak with you." I checked my phone's calendar. The board meets in an hour. Let's make her wait. The board meeting was everything I prepared for. 5 years of evidence meticulously gathered and organized. Every questionable deal, every misused fund, every instance of harassment or discrimination I'd witnessed while working entry-level jobs throughout the company. "Ms. Sterling," one board member sputtered, "this is unprecedented." "No," I corrected. "What's unprecedented is how long this corruption was allowed to continue. This company was built on innovation and integrity. Today, we return to those values." My phone buzzed. A message from Dad. "Your mother would be proud." By evening, Sterling Enterprises had a new organizational structure. Qualified employees who'd been overlooked due to office politics were being promoted. The pension funds were being audited and restored. And my brother's old office was being converted into an employee daycare center. Madison finally caught me as I was leaving. Her designer outfit was wrinkled, her perfect makeup smeared. "Sarah, please, you have to understand. We never knew." "That's exactly the problem," I interrupted. "You never bothered to know anything about people you thought were beneath you. How's that working out?" "My husband. The pension funds. Please, we can work something out." I held up my cheap phone. "Everything's already worked out. It's all documented right here on my embarrassing little phone. The authorities have copies." I stepped into my car, then paused. "Oh, again, Madison. I'm keeping the phone. It reminds me never to judge someone by appearances." The next few months transformed Sterling Enterprises. Employee satisfaction skyrocketed. Productivity increased. Even our stock price jumped when the market realized how much dead weight we cut. James Jr. tried to contest Dad's decision, but it's hard to claim rightful inheritance when you're under federal investigation for fraud. Last I heard, he was looking for work, but his reputation preceded him. Madison's husband took a plea deal. She sold her designer handbags to pay for his legal fees and moved in with her sister in Ohio. 1 year later, I sat in my office, looking at the same view I contemplated the night of the party. My $50 phone sat in a frame on my desk, retired but preserved as a reminder. Beside it stood a photo of my mother, smiling proudly. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Miss Sterling, the new employee orientation is starting." I smiled, picking up my new phone, still not the most expensive model, but chosen for its functionality rather than status. "Thank you, Thomas. Let's go welcome them to the new Sterling Enterprises." The orientation room was full of eager faces. I took my place at the podium, my simple phone recording for training purposes, just like its predecessor had done. "Welcome to Sterling Enterprises," I began. "Let me tell you a story about a $50 phone and what it taught me about true value. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just about getting even. Sometimes it's about making sure no one else has to experience what you did. Sometimes it's about changing an entire culture, one recorded conversation at a time. And sometimes it's about keeping your cheap phone as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and the most powerful weapon isn't the most expensive one. It's the one people underestimate.